Hi everyone, Teddy Baldassarre here, and in this video we're looking at a watch and a case that's one of my favorites from this brand, but also really for any chronograph watch. This is the Chronomaster Revival A384. So in this video and on this channel, we cover watches available for purchase on our website, teddybaldassarre.com, as an authorized dealer. But also throughout this video, if you have further questions or are looking to buy this watch, you can check out the link in the description down below to the product page. But without further ado, let's jump into the video and take a closer look at this watch. When it comes to important watches of the 20th century, the collective culture of watch enthusiasm tends to gravitate towards putting flowers at the feet of the same players over and over. Though among the storied names in this arena, Zenith has to be in the conversation for its outstanding contributions to the watch industry as a whole. Most notably, Zenith will always be connected to the creation of the El Primero caliber, being among the first automatic chronograph calibers in 1969, all while operating at the seldom seen 5 Hz beat frequency. The El Primero, which debuted in alignment with legendary references of the A384, A385, and A386 way back in 1969, had their lifespans initially cut short as the looming quartz crisis during this time devastated much of the industry. With production of the El Primero slowing, new leadership saw little need for the caliber anymore. However, in an act of passion and foresight, watchmaker Charles Vermeau, who was an employee of Zenith and was heavily involved in the creation of the El Primero, stealthily saved crucial documentation, parts, and machines in an attic at the manufacturer with the hope that one day they could be recovered with better times ahead. Then in 1984, Zenith, with their new ownership along with the help of Mr. Vermeau, gathered up all the hidden parts, plans, and tools, and began the revival of the El Primero movement. Beyond its technical excellence that was trailblazing in 1969 and still is today, the El Primero famously powered the Rolex Daytona for a decade in the tail end of the 20th century, as well as being arguably the most recognizable name in all of watch movements along watchmaking's storied history. Zenith, as well as the El Primero, has experienced a bit of a resurgence in the last decade, with cases like the A386 getting much attention. However, a legend in its own right is the A384, a tonneau-shaped case and unique bracelet that is peerless in its approach. Following a 50-year anniversary of the El Primero, we've seen a gradual rollout of standardized production models that pay homage to these legends of the mid-20th century, which brings us to one of my favorite chronographs in watchmaking, the Chronomaster Revival A384. Now, beginning with the case, you have a set of dimensions that are unparalleled in their feel and offer a wear that is nothing short of sublime for those with a desire for classic wearing dimensions. The Chronomaster Revival A384 measures in with just 37 millimeters in diameter, a relatively thin 12.5 millimeters in thickness for an automatic chronograph, and a lug-to-lug of 47 millimeters. If you have worn this watch as well as the A386, you will find some parallels to how these watches feel in terms of their closely mirroring overall dimension set. However, this case sits on the wrist unlike almost anything else I've ever worn. Given its longer lug-to-lug and narrow case width, it creates a hybridized approach of feel that brings the best of rectangular case shape and more traditional circle case shape, wearing larger than its proposed 37 millimeters in practice. Another aspect that impacts the optics of how this piece looks while on the wrist is the absence of a traditional bezel, leaving more area for the case to show off its distinctiveness. The watch looks and fits great on nearly any wrist apart from those on the larger side of the wrist size spectrum. To top off the case, we have a fine brushing finish from the center outward and a strong bevel along the sides of the case. The top of the lugs also have a strong boxy design and high polished surface that matches the smaller hits of polish nicely, while the sides of the case are brushed. At 3 o'clock is a centralized crown with pump pushers sitting above and beneath, which are a joy to operate, and while there is no screw down crown here, this watch still manages 50 meters of water resistance. Set between the quoted 19 millimeter lug width, you will find the faithfully recreated ladder style bracelet reminiscent of historic models. Following mostly brushed surfaces, the bracelet follows the form of the period it aims to honor, terminating with a fold-over stamp clasp with a whopping 9 points of micro adjustment, and includes half links for even more ability to adjust for its owner. As we move from the central case elements into the dial, we first find a dome sapphire crystal revealing this striking vintage feeling panda dial that serves a lesson of balance and contrast. At the dial outskirts, the black tachometer surrounds the central dial, opting for white print. Resting just inside that outer track is a central surface I would classify as closer to a true white than silver, with 3 large subdials in black with slightly recessed centers, serving as indications for different time options, with the running seconds at 9, the 12-hour chronograph timer at 12, and a 30-minute counter at 6. A step perimeter for the date aperture appears at 4:30 with a date wheel color that seamlessly transitions to the main dial color. The applied hour indices are of high polish and contain superluminova to match the pencil hands, which shine with adequate glow, though are not going to be near exceptional. And then finally is going to be topped off with a running chronograph second hand in red. Dial text is only featured at 12 with an applied Zenith star sitting above the cursive El Primero typography, referencing this storied caliber on the inside. Now, as mentioned in our introduction, the El Primero is a chronograph movement of legend that even 50 years later still has a lasting impact and operation that is hard to rival. The exhibition caseback thankfully provides us view of the automatic caliber 400 within. Now, this movement puts much on display compared to other automatic calibers by way of its lateral clutch, while also utilizing a column wheel for its chronograph functions, which is felt with the pusher action during stop and start. The movement features perlage finishing on central bridges and base plate, with Côte de Genève finishing on the skeletonized rotor and blued screws and the column wheel. It operates with the synonymous higher frequency of an El Primero at 5 Hz or 36,000 vibrations per hour or 10 beats per second, showcasing a smooth sweep. One point of note for this El Primero caliber is that it does not feature hacking seconds for the caliber 400 version and has a less conventional operation when activating the crown, where hand winding is done in the first position still, but the date activation is done at the farthest pulled out point and the changing of the time is done at the second position. In terms of general operation here, we're looking at 36,000 vibrations per hour, 5 Hz, does not feature hacking but does feature hand winding and has a power reserve of 50 hours. So now to unpack when looking at the A384. So this is a watch that is directly pulled from the past, and that is how it's informed for the future. Some of that is almost done to an extent where it is going to bypass some of the modern spec and feel that you might want. One is going to be no hacking on this movement. That for some I know is a pain point. This is not the case for many of the modern El Primero calibers now that have been rolled out, but for this caliber 400 version, that is going to be the case. In a similar theme, you have a clasp that feels of the period. Yes, there's some modern elements to it, but it is going to be stamped and might be falling behind some of the other clasps that you're going to see from Zenith, but still getting some nice micro adjustment in the process. But now when trying to think about this watch, and I look back to that title that we have for this video, we use the word incomparable. What does that mean? I mean, watches are meant to be compared with one another. There's so many options, but there's not a perfect comparison for this watch in many aspects. One is going to be its history. The other element, though, is just how this watch wears on the wrist. Its silhouette with its case, the faceted angular structure of its case, how it's almost an illusion of sorts, and how it's able to work with this very narrow width. It is unlike anything else I've ever worn, and it's an amazing watch. The thickness of this piece is also very reasonable considering that you're getting an automatic chronograph movement. If you look around at the landscape of automatic chronographs available under $10,000, you will commonly see over 14 millimeters thick as being a metric often. This is under 13 millimeters thick. 5 Hz beat operation frequency for the movement itself. Design is so clean and balanced with the black and white panda style configuration. I love the way this watch looks. And in a sea of watches, and I don't want to be so derogatory when I say this, but this pervasive hype culture that has now made itself felt in so many watches nowadays, then you have a watch like this. It's not trying to be anything that it's not. In many ways, it's a sleeper pick, but for those that know that this is an important watch, a movement that is at the cornerstone of chronograph movements in the history of watchmaking, and a design that simply is incomparable. All right, everybody, that's all we have for this one. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell icon. That really does help us out. Also, if you are in the market for this watch, we do have it available on TeddyBaldassarre.com. TeddyBaldassarre.com is an authorized dealer of over 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer. Also, how we're able to fund all of our productions, traveling across the world, investing back into the community is through selling watches on our site. So if you are in the market for a watch, we'd love to have your business. We know you can buy a watch essentially anywhere nowadays, but we really work hard to create a world-class experience that allow you to get your next watch. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.